Sure that you're tracking the primary audience of Romans as Paul characterizes them. Which is it? Is it a mixed group of Jewish and non-Jewish people baptized into the Messiah? This is what a lot of our commentators present. Or is it people from among the Gentiles who have been baptized into the Messiah? The answer, at least as Paul characterizes the audience, is the second. People from among the Gentiles who have been baptized into the Messiah. Paul doesn't address himself directly in the letter to anyone that he describes as Jewish. So that has all kinds of implications, but first let's look at where we see this the most explicitly in the letter. The very beginning, when Paul is addressing the audience, giving his greeting, identifying himself, saying that through Christ, he and other apostles have received grace and apostleship to bring about the obedience of faith among all the Gentiles for his name, among whom you too are called of Jesus Messiah, to all God's beloved in Rome. So Paul regards the audience as people among all the Gentiles. Just a few verses later, when Paul is giving a little bit of a narrative of what has delayed him in coming to Rome, he says, "Now I don't want you to be uninformed, sisters and brothers, that I have often intended to come to you, and have been prevented thus far, in order that I might obtain some fruit also among you, just as I have among the rest of the Gentiles." So again, Paul addressing himself to the audience as people from among the Gentiles. And then finally, when he wants to accentuate that they are from the Gentiles, in a part of the letter where this becomes very important, and we'll get to this in chapter 11 later in the course, but he says, "Now I am speaking to you, to Gentiles. Inasmuch as I am therefore indeed apostle to the Gentiles, I glorify my service." So hopefully this clarifies that the audience of Romans, as Paul characterizes them, are people from among the Gentiles. This means that Paul is not teaching in the letter against Jews, against Jewish tendencies, against Judaism. These are very common inferences that the mainstream of the Christian reception of Romans has drawn from the letter and effectively turned its teaching into something that is built on the backs of Jews. Jews that are not Christians, Jews that supposedly need to become Christian in order to be part of the people of God, something like that. And I want to caution us against that because, in fact, Paul is nowhere in Romans teaching against Jews per se or Jewish tendencies. So if you find that sort of creeping out in your interpretations, try to check that impulse and consider again how you might hear the words as addressed to non-Jewish people. Again, people who are now serving the Jewish Messiah, who are serving the Jewish God, who are following the law of Moses in various ways, but doing all of that as people from among the Gentiles, so that the things that Paul is warning them against are not necessarily things characteristic of Jews, but things that seem to be happening among these people from among the among the Gentiles with respect to particular Jewish institutions, the Jewish God, the Jewish Messiah. Hope that's helpful.